Why are you following me?
Why are you in the desert?
People! They killed your people! They killed my brother!
The streaming performance proved remarkable and defied all expectations based on the film's critical reception and theatrical failure. Hidden Strike became the most viewed film on Netflix worldwide during its launch weekend, achieving the #1 position in the United States and 53 other countries. This success came particularly notably without significant promotional support from Netflix itself, suggesting that the inherent appeal of seeing Jackie Chan and John Cena together was sufficient to drive viewership based primarily on the film's presence in the platform's interface and algorithmic recommendations. The film maintained its dominant position on Netflix for 2 consecutive weeks, remaining the #1 movie both in the US and globally. This sustained success indicated that initial viewers were completing the film and potentially recommending it to others, creating organic momentum that extended beyond just launch weekend curiosity. The viewership numbers were substantial, with Hidden Strike registering 56.8 million views worldwide within its first 28 days of release on the platform. To understand the significance of these streaming numbers, it's important to recognize how they compare to theatrical viewership. While the film's theatrical gross of under $1 million might have represented perhaps 150,000,200,000 ticket buyers worldwide, the 56.8 million Netflix views meant that the streaming audience was roughly 300–400 times larger than the theatrical audience. This dramatic disparity illustrated how streaming platforms can expose films to vastly larger audiences than even successful theatrical releases, and how the economics and success metrics of film distribution have fundamentally transformed. The streaming success extended beyond the launch period, with Hidden Strike ultimately becoming the 6th most watched movie globally on Netflix for the entire year of 2023. This annual ranking placed it among a select group of films that generated the most viewing hours on the platform throughout the year, an achievement that would have seemed impossible based on the film's critical reception and theatrical performance. The sustained viewership over months indicated that Hidden Strike had become a reliable catalog title. Baghdad. After a failed rescue mission to escort a group of scientists away from an oil refinery under siege by rebels, Chinese ex-Special Forces soldier Dragon Luo, Jackie Chan, joins forces with U.S. gun-for-hire Chris Van Horn, John Cena, who has his own personal reasons for tracking down the insurgents. When Quentin Tarantino recently talked about Netflix films not existing in the zeitgeist, he may well have been talking about Hidden Strike. Directed by Scott Waugh, Need for Speed, the upcoming The Expendables 4, this action thriller pairing Jackie Chan with John Cena crept onto the platform with zero fanfare and subsequently does little to do anything that lodges in the memory. The story feels like something cooked up in an early 14-year-old's bedroom. Commander Dragon Luo Chan, the leader of Shadow Squad, honestly, heads up a mission to extract workers from a Middle Eastern oil refinery under attack from rebels. The only way out is through the highway of death, just off the interstate of existential angst, presumably where the coach convoy comes under attack from a band of mercenaries who have seemingly wandered in from Mad Max Fury Road. The selling point of the film, the promising double act of Jackie Chan and John Cena, is badly fumbled. Among their number is American soldier of fortune Chris Cena, whose only personality trait is his frankly annoying habit of giving everyone and everything a nickname. Chris is in the pay of Big Bad Owen Paddock, Pilou Asbæk the Broken Barquet, but, when he is double-crossed, Chris joins forces with Luo to save Professor Chang. John Wesley, keeper of an all-important dongle, never has a film uttered the word dongle so often, and take down Paddock. Reading this back, this is an insult to nerdy 14-year-olds. With the new Chinese action comedy starring Jackie Chan and John Cena becoming a highly anticipated hit in the U.S., curiosity around Hidden Strike 2 news has already started to surface. as the idea of a Chan and Cena-led franchise of any kind definitely has merit. Hidden Strike stars Jackie Chan as a former Chinese special ops agent who has since retired and gone into business in the private security sector. When he is hired to help rescue some workers at a Chinese oil refinery, he discovers a plan in place to steal the oil, with a group threatening the biggest oil heist in history. He then has to team up with the former American Marine, John Cena, to rescue the workers and stop the criminals. If there will be a Hidden Strike sequel, it will depend on the studio's reaction to how well the movie does on streaming in the United States. This is where an actor like John Cena comes in. Chan's best movies over the last decade have been mostly animated voice movies, although he did have a couple of average success stories with The Foreigner in 2017 and Skip Trace in 2016. However, Cena has become a major star thanks to his role as Peacemaker in the DCU and his great comic timing in action movies. As for Hidden Strike, it dropped on Netflix in July 2023. So Hidden Strike 2 will likely rest on if it does as well in the US as it has done internationally. Hidden Strike 2 recent news. Hidden Strike 2's fate hinges on Netflix's decision. Hidden Strike 2 news hasn't included a green light yet, but it's far more likely now. Hidden Strike has arrived on Netflix, as it hit #1 on Netflix in a few days. Hidden Strike ended up hitting Netflix on July 28 in the United States, and it ended up as the #1 movie in the United States and 53 other countries. This was amazing news, since Netflix didn't give Hidden Strike any promotion and critics didn't respond to it favorably. Jackie Chan and John Cena team up for a Mad Max-like action comedy in the trailer for Hidden Strike. A legend in Hong Kong thanks to his death-defying work in classic martial arts films throughout the '70s and '80s. Chan first became a true Hollywood action star when he appeared alongside Chris Tucker in the hit 1998 movie Rush Hour. Now 69 years old, Chan continues putting in work as an international superstar, with Rush Hour 4 still being planned. While fans wait for Rush Hour 4 to happen, Chan has lined up an action-packed pairing with Peacemaker star Cena in Hidden Strike, which just unleashed a trailer via Rapid Thrillers. It's no surprise that the action looks wild in Hidden Strike, and it's also no surprise to see Chan and Cena showing off a lot of comedic chemistry as they take on bad guys in some Mad Max-style chase scenes. Interestingly though, the film was originally set to star Chan alongside Sylvester Stallone, until Stallone's Creed II commitments called him away. Everything we know about Hidden Strike 2: ex-Special Forces soldiers must escort a group of civilians along Baghdad's a highway of death to the safety of the Green Zone, reads the synopsis for Hidden Strike. Joining Cena and Chan in the cast as Game of Thrones Euron Greyjoy actor Pilou Asbæk the Broken Barquet, who looks to be playing the film's main bad guy. The cast also includes Ming-Na Hu, Amadeus Serafini, Lima and Rachel Holloway. Needed to earn approximately $160 million to be considered financially viable through theatrical release alone. The actual gross fell short of this mark by more than $159 million, representing an almost complete absence of theatrical audience interest. Several factors contributed to this disastrous theatrical performance. First and foremost was the extremely limited release strategy, which meant the film was never playing in enough theaters to generate substantial revenue. When a film opens in only a handful of locations, even strong per-theater averages cannot overcome the fundamental limitation of having very few screens. The lack of marketing support meant that even audiences who might have been interested in the film likely had no awareness of its theatrical availability. The timing of the release also worked against the film. By July 2023, the summer movie season was already crowded with major releases, and without significant promotional support, Hidden Strike couldn't compete for audience attention. Additionally, the lengthy delay between production in 2018 and release in 2023 meant that whatever momentum or interest the initial casting announcements had generated had long since dissipated. Film projects depend on maintaining public awareness and interest, and a 5-year gap between production and release is generally fatal to such buzz. The film's quality, as reflected in critical reviews that began emerging alongside the release, likely contributed to weak word of mouth even among the limited theatrical audience. In an era where social media can rapidly spread opinions about films, negative reviews and audience reactions can quickly dampen any organic interest. When a film can't generate positive buzz to counteract its marketing deficiencies, theatrical prospects become even more limited. For the filmmakers, producers, and investors, the theatrical results represented a financial disaster that would have been catastrophic if theatrical revenue had been the only revenue stream. The $80 million production budget, along with whatever additional costs were incurred during the extended post-production period, had virtually no prospect of being recouped through traditional theatrical distribution. This reality underscored why the Netflix deal had become essential to the film's economic equation. However, the theatrical box office numbers ultimately became almost irrelevant to the film's overall performance and reach. In the streaming era, box office has become just one of many possible metrics for a film's success, and for Hidden Strike, it was the least important one. The film's theatrical release served primarily as a formality, fulfilling contractual obligations, while the real release strategy focused on the streaming platform where the film would actually find its audience. Critical response. The critical reception of Hidden Strike was predominantly negative, with reviewers expressing disappointment in multiple aspects of the film despite the appealing premise of uniting Jackie Chan and John Cena. The critical consensus, as aggregated by Rotten Tomatoes, reflected this negative assessment, with only 24% of the 17 surveyed critics giving the film a positive review. This rotten rating placed the film firmly in the category of critically rejected works, though the relatively small sample size of reviews reflected the film's limited theatrical release and the tendency of critics to focus on wide releases rather than limited or streaming debuts. Chase Hutchinson of Collider delivered one of the harsher critical assessments, awarding the film a grade of D. Hutchinson's review identified several fundamental problems with the film. The critic found fault with the plot, suggesting that the narrative failed to provide adequate structure or interest to support the action sequences. For an action film, the story doesn't need to be particularly complex or original, but it does need to provide sufficient context, stakes, and character motivation to make audiences care about what's happening on screen. Hutchinson's criticism implies that Hidden Strike failed to achieve even this basic threshold. The review also took aim at the film's action sequences, which is particularly damaging for a film whose entire raison d'apostrophe superscript a trait is action spectacle. Rather than finding the set pieces exciting or innovative, Hutchinson was disappointed by their execution. The criticism specifically highlighted the overuse of computer-generated effects as a problem. While modern action films routinely employ CGI to enhance or create impossible stunts and environments, there's an art to integrating digital effects seamlessly with practical action. When effects become too obvious or artificial-looking, they can undermine the visceral impact that action sequences need to deliver. For a film featuring Jackie Chan, whose career has been built on authentic, practical stunt work, this over-reliance on digital effects represented a betrayal of what audiences expect from a Chan vehicle. Perhaps most damagingly, Hutchinson noted a lack of chemistry between Chan and Cena. The entire commercial premise of Hidden Strike rested on the pairing of these two charismatic action stars. If the leads don't generate an engaging dynamic, whether through buddy comedy banter, contrasting personalities that create dramatic tension, or genuine rapport, then one of the film's primary selling points fails to materialize. The criticism suggests that despite both actors' individual charisma and proven ability to work effectively with co-stars in other films, something about this particular pairing or the material they were given didn't generate the spark needed to make their scenes together compelling. James Marsh of the South China Morning Post delivered an even harsher assessment, awarding the film just 1 out of 5 stars. Marsh echoed the criticism about the lack of chemistry between the leads, reinforcing that this wasn't just one critic's idiosyncratic complaint but a genuine issue with the film. His characterization of the story as a tired, By the numbers affair suggested that the screenplay failed to bring any freshness or originality to familiar action thriller tropes. Action films can succeed with conventional plots if the execution is sufficiently energetic and inventive, but Marsh's review implies that Hidden Strike offered neither innovative storytelling nor sufficiently exciting execution to compensate for its narrative familiarity. Marsh's description of the action as underwhelming reinforced the concerns raised by other critics. For an $80 million action film starring two major action stars, underwhelming is perhaps the most damaging adjective possible. Action sequences need to be spectacular, surprising, or at minimum, viscerally exciting. When they fail to achieve any of these qualities, the film has failed at its most basic level. The criticism suggests that the action sequences lack the creativity, choreography, or technical execution necessary to deliver the thrills that audiences expect from this genre and these stars. However, not all critical responses were entirely negative. CGA of Geek Culture provided a more moderate assessment, giving the film 6.1 out of 10. This review acknowledged what worked in Hidden Strike while being honest about its limitations. See noted delightful chemistry between Chen and Cena, directly contradicting the assessments from Hutchinson and Marsh. This discrepancy in critical opinions about the lead's chemistry is not unusual. The perception of whether actors work well together can be highly subjective, depending on what different viewers are looking for in such partnerships. C's positive take on the chemistry suggests that while it may not have worked for all viewers, some audiences did find the interplay between the stars engaging. The Geek Culture Review's conclusion that viewers should come for the action, stay for the delightful chemistry between Chen and Cena but not much else represented a classic case of damning with faint praise. The review essentially acknowledged that the film had some entertainment value in its core elements but lacked depth, originality, or craft in most other respects. The characterization of Hidden Strike as having its fair share of charm while being ultimately a forgettable jaunt that serves as sheer popcorn entertainment positioned the film as acceptable for undemanding viewing but unlikely to leave any lasting impression. The prediction that it would likely become a distant memory a few months down the road suggested that even viewers who enjoyed it in the moment wouldn't find it memorable or rewatchable. Neil Sons of the Times of India offered another relatively positive assessment, awarding 3 out of 5 stars. This review took a pragmatic view of the film, essentially arguing that it delivered what it promised for its target audience. The observation that neither star is expendable because of their sheer drawing power acknowledged the fundamental commercial calculation behind the film, that the stars themselves were the product being sold, and the film succeeded or failed based on whether it adequately showcased them. Son's characterization of Hidden Strike as a brain-dead yet amusing flick represented another form of qualified recommendation. The brain-dead descriptor acknowledged that the film made no pretensions to sophistication, narrative complexity, or thematic depth. However, amusing suggested that for viewers willing to accept the film on its own unpretentious terms, it could provide entertainment value. The reviews noting that the film makes the most of Chen and Cena's abilities to entertain on-screen suggested that while it might not be a great film by critical standards, it at least succeeded in the fundamental goal of showcasing its stars doing what they do best. The Times of India review also speculated about potential commercial success leading to a sequel, a prediction that proved prescient given the film's streaming performance. Even if theatrical returns would never have justified a follow-up. This forward-looking perspective suggested that some observers recognized the film might find its audience through alternative distribution channels even if traditional theatrical metrics looked disastrous. The overall critical response pattern revealed interesting dynamics about film criticism and audience expectations. The harshest critics seemed to be evaluating Hidden Strike against traditional standards of cinematic quality, coherent storytelling, sophisticated character development, high-quality visual effects, innovative action choreography. By these measures, the film clearly fell short, delivering a generic, effects-heavy action film that failed to distinguish itself from countless similar products. The more positive critics, however, seemed to be evaluating the film against different standards, whether it provided unchallenging entertainment for action fans, whether the stars demonstrated their charisma, whether it delivered enough spectacle and humor to justify a casual viewing. By these more forgiving measures, Hidden Strike managed to pass muster for some reviewers. The critical reception also highlighted the challenges of international co-productions trying to satisfy multiple markets simultaneously. Such films often struggle to find an identity that works for all audiences. They may be too American for Chinese tastes and too Chinese for American tastes, or they may sand down cultural specificity in an attempt to be universally accessible, resulting in something that feels generic to everyone. Hidden Strike's critical reception suggested it fell into some of those traps, creating a product that didn't strongly appeal to critics in any particular market. The small number of reviews, only 17 critics surveyed by Rotten Tomatoes, itself told a story about the film's theatrical presence. Major releases typically generate dozens or even hundreds of critical reviews, as publications and websites scramble to provide coverage for films that will be widely seen. The limited critical attention paid to Hidden Strike reflected both its minimal theatrical release and a general sense among film critics that this was not an important or particularly worthy subject for serious critical consideration. In the era of streaming, many critics have chosen to focus their limited time and attention on more prominent theatrical releases or prestigious streaming premieres rather than every action film that appears on Netflix. Interestingly, the critical response would prove to have little impact on the film's overall performance or reach. In the streaming era, critical opinion has become less influential for certain types of films, particularly genre fare aimed at general audiences rather than prestige productions seeking awards consideration. Audiences browsing Netflix for something entertaining to watch are less likely to consult critical reviews than they would be when deciding whether to spend money on theater tickets. The algorithm-driven nature of streaming platform recommendations also means that films can find audiences based on viewing patterns and preferences rather than critical consensus. The disconnect between critical reception and audience engagement that Hidden Strike would demonstrate represented a broader trend in contemporary film distribution and consumption. Traditional gatekeepers like film critics have lost some of their power to determine what audiences watch, particularly in streaming contexts where the barrier to trying something is simply clicking a button rather than spending money and time on a theatrical outing. This democratization has both positive and negative implications. It allows films that critics dismiss to find audiences who might genuinely enjoy them, but it also potentially reduces standards and makes it easier for mediocre content to attract viewership simply through star power and marketing on streaming platforms. The critical reception of Hidden Strike also raised questions about what we expect from action films and how we evaluate them. The genre has always existed in tension between critical disdain and popular appeal. Action films are routinely dismissed by critics as mindless spectacle while attracting large audiences who find exactly what they're looking for. The question of whether action films should be judged primarily on the quality of their action choreography and entertainment value, or whether they should be held to the same narrative and thematic standards as dramas, remains contested. Hidden Strike's mixed critical reception reflected this ongoing debate, with harsher critics appearing to judge it by higher standards while more forgiving critics accepted its limitations as inherent to its unpretentious genre positioning. The film's critical reception ultimately became just one data point in a complex picture of its performance and impact. While the negative reviews confirmed that Hidden Strike was not a quality product by traditional critical standards, the film's success on Netflix will demonstrate that critical consensus is no longer the primary arbiter of a film's reach or impact in the streaming era. The reviews served primarily as a warning to potential viewers that they shouldn't expect cinematic excellence, but for many viewers browsing streaming options, the opportunity to see Jackie Chan and John Cena in an action film together was sufficient appeal regardless of critical opinion. Despite the theatrical disappointment and predominantly negative critical reception, Hidden Strike found extraordinary success on Netflix, demonstrating the platform's ability to create hits through its vast subscriber base and recommendation algorithms. The film premiered on Netflix on July 28, 2023. The same day as its limited U.S. theatrical release, immediately reaching millions of subscribers across numerous countries without any of the geographical limitations of theatrical distribution. complex given the film's bilingual nature, requiring careful work to ensure intelligibility and proper balance between Mandarin and English dialogue tracks, along with the creation of dubbed versions for different markets. Music. The musical score for Hidden Strike played a crucial role in establishing the film's tone and enhancing its action sequences. While specific details about the composer and the musical approach have not been extensively documented in available sources, the score needed to bridge cultural elements reflecting both the Chinese and American aspects of the production while supporting the film's action-adventure narrative. Film music for international co-productions presents unique challenges, as composers must create a sonic palette that can resonate with audiences across different cultural contexts. The score likely incorporated both Western orchestral elements, traditional for Hollywood action films, and potentially some Chinese instrumental or melodic elements to acknowledge the film's Chinese co-production status and characters. This fusion approach has become increasingly common in international action films that seek to appeal to both Eastern and Western markets simultaneously. The action sequences required dynamic, pulse-pounding musical accompaniment to heighten tension and excitement. Composers of action films typically employ driving rhythms, bold brass and percussion, and escalating dynamics to match the visual intensity of chase scenes, fights, and explosions. For Hidden Strike's various set pieces, the convoy attack, the village defense, the refinery assault, the music had to provide appropriate emotional and energetic support without overwhelming the sound effects and dialogue that are equally crucial in action sequences. Beyond the action, the score also needed to support the film's dramatic and emotional moments. The relationships between Wang and his daughter Mai, Chris's motivations for helping the village children, and the developing camaraderie between the two leads all required musical themes that could convey warmth, pathos, and character development. These quieter, more intimate musical moments provide essential contrast to the bombastic action cues and help audiences connect emotionally with the characters. The placement and mixing of music in the final soundtrack represents a delicate balance. Too much music, or music that's mixed too prominently, can make a film feel overwrought or manipulative. Too little, or music that's too subtle, can leave action sequences feeling flat or emotional moments lacking impact. The music editors and re-recording mixers working on Hidden Strike had to find the right balance to support Waugh's directorial vision while ensuring that the music enhanced rather than overwhelmed the viewing experience. Given the film's troubled post-production journey and extended completion timeline, it's possible that the musical score underwent revisions or adjustments as the edit evolved. Composers often create music for scenes that are subsequently cut, requiring new cues to be written for revised sequences. The iterative nature of post-production means that musical scoring is often one of the last elements completed, as the composer needs a locked picture to ensure that musical hits, transitions, and emotional beats align precisely with the visual content. The release strategy for Hidden Strike proved nearly as complicated and protracted as its production and post-production phases, ultimately resulting in a limited theatrical rollout followed by a major streaming premiere that would redefine the film's success metrics and public perception. Theatrical. After years of delays and uncertainty about whether the film would ever receive proper distribution, Hidden Strike finally secured a theatrical release in select international markets. The film premiered on July 6, 2023, in the United Arab Emirates and other select international territories. This limited initial release strategy represented a cautious approach from the distributors, potentially reflecting concerns about the film's commercial viability or quality, especially given the lengthy gap between production and release. The choice of the United Arab Emirates as the initial release territory was strategic for several reasons. The UAE has become an important market for international films, with a sophisticated exhibition infrastructure and audiences receptive to Hollywood action films. Additionally, given the film's Middle Eastern setting, there may have been interest in gauging how regional audiences would respond to the film's depiction of Iraq and the region. Even though the story was fictional and the locations were filmed elsewhere. The theatrical release in the United States came slightly later, on July 28, 2023, but it was extremely limited in scope. Rather than receiving the wide theatrical release that a film starring Jackie Chan and John Cena might traditionally warrant, Hidden Strike appeared in only a handful of theaters. This limited release strategy essentially positioned the theatrical exhibition as a formality or contractual obligation rather than a genuine attempt to maximize box office revenue. The theatrical run served primarily to satisfy distribution agreements and potentially qualify the film for certain awards considerations. While the real distribution strategy focused on streaming, the theatrical release strategy reflected the changing economics and distribution landscape of the film industry. In the 2020s, particularly following the COVID-19 pandemic's disruption of theatrical exhibition, distributors became increasingly comfortable with either skipping theatrical releases entirely or using very limited theatrical windows before moving to streaming platforms. For a film like Hidden Strike, which had faced years of delays and uncertainty, a limited theatrical release followed by streaming was likely seen as the most practical path to recouping the production investment and actually getting the film in front of audiences. The theatrical marketing campaign was minimal, particularly in the United States. Without significant advertising support, media coverage, or promotional appearances by the stars, the film's theatrical presence went largely unnoticed by general audiences. A trailer was released on May 30, 2023, providing the first substantial look at the finished film and generating some interest among action film fans. However, the proximity of the trailer release to the film's theatrical debut, just over a month, indicated that this was not a traditional, sustained theatrical marketing campaign with months of advance promotion, multiple trailers, and extensive media coverage. For audiences who did see Hidden Strike theatrically, the experience likely highlighted the film's visual effects-heavy approach and large-scale action sequences. Theatrical presentation can enhance such spectacle, with big screens and surround sound systems providing the immersive experience that action films are designed to deliver. However, the theatrical audience for the film was quite small, meaning that the vast majority of viewers would experience the film in very different circumstances. Home media. While traditional home media releases involving physical DVDs and Blu-rays have become less prominent in the streaming era, the timing and specifics of any physical media release for Hidden Strike were not extensively detailed in available information. The focus of the film's home viewing strategy was squarely on digital streaming rather than physical media sales or rentals. The digital release landscape has fundamentally transformed how films reach home audiences. Rather than waiting months after theatrical release for home video availability, films can now move to streaming platforms within weeks or even simultaneously with theatrical release. This compressed window has become particularly common for films with limited theatrical prospects, where the economics favor quickly moving to platforms where they can reach larger audiences. For Hidden Strike, the digital strategy centered entirely on Netflix, which would become the primary platform through which global audiences experienced the film. The decision to partner with Netflix represented both the practical necessity and a potentially lucrative opportunity. Given the film's troubled path to completion and the lack of enthusiasm for a wide theatrical release from traditional distributors, Netflix offered a solution that could get the film to a massive global audience while providing the financial resources necessary to complete and market the film. Netflix's role in the release strategy transformed Hidden Strike from a potentially forgotten failure into a film that reached tens of millions of viewers worldwide. The streaming giant's vast subscriber base, present in numerous countries, meant that the film could find audiences that would never have had the opportunity to see it theatrically. This democratization of access represents one of the key advantages of streaming platforms. Films that might have limited theatrical appeal or distribution challenges can still reach enormous audiences if they land on the right platform. The Netflix release strategy also eliminated many of the financial pressures associated with theatrical distribution. There were no worries about opening weekend box office numbers, competition with other theatrical releases, or the need to sustain audience interest over multiple weeks. Instead, the film simply needed to attract viewers to click and watch, a much lower bar to clear. Netflix's algorithm-driven recommendation system could push the film to subscribers who had watched similar action films or content featuring the stars, creating a targeted audience that was predisposed to be interested. The timing of the Netflix release on July 28, 2023, coinciding with the limited U.S. theatrical release, represented a day-and-date strategy that has become increasingly common. Rather than asking audiences to choose between theatrical viewing and waiting for home availability, the simultaneous release acknowledged that most viewers would be experiencing the film at home regardless, so there was no benefit to creating an artificial window between the two release platforms. The reception of Hidden Strike presented a stark contrast between critical assessment and audience engagement, illustrating the increasingly complex relationships between traditional markers of film quality and actual viewership in the streaming era. The film's performance demonstrated that critical consensus and box office results were no longer the sole or even primary measures of a film's success or reach. The theatrical box office performance of Hidden Strike was, by any traditional metric, a catastrophic failure. The film grossed only $981,505 worldwide from its extremely limited theatrical release. When measured against the reported production budget of $80 million, this represents one of the most dramatic commercial failures in recent cinema history. The film failed to recoup even 1.3% of its production budget through theatrical exhibition, and this figure doesn't even account for the additional costs of marketing and distribution. To put this box office performance in perspective, films are generally expected to gross at least twice their production budget to break even after accounting for exhibitor shares, marketing costs, and distribution expenses. By that standard, Hidden Strike would have. Hidden Strike's casting masterfully fuses cultures, with Chan's Chinese corp, Cena's American bravado, and Asbæk the broken barquet's Euro villainy mirroring Iraq's multicultural quagmire. Waugh and Zhang ground the Eastern stakes, while Serafini and Holloway add Western edges. Cena's 2025 reflections on Mandarin immersion highlight this. It was about mutual respect to Jackie's world open mind. This blend, per Wikipedia, evolved from Stallone's Dropout, birthing a fresher dynamic. Director's vision. Scott Waugh's strategic selection. Scott Waugh's casting philosophy of practical stunts over gear drove Hidden Strike, reuniting with Chan's team post-Need for Speed, 2014. In Approx, he said, John for Heart, Pilou for Menace, Chanruai for Seoul each fits the convoy's mosaic. Budget constraints favored unknowns like Wang, yielding organic energy. Impact on ensemble dynamics. How casting shapes the convoy's chaos. The cast's interplay turns Hidden Strike's 11-bus odyssey into a pressure cooker. Chan's paternalism clashes with Cena's sarcasm. Asbæk the broken barquet's whispers sow discord. Maugh's barbs humanize. In the heist climax, this cohesion peaks Olmo's team up with Chris feels earned, per Rotten Tomatoes. Casting's chemistry carries the creaky plot. It's a testament to Waugh's picks, diverse, driven, dynamically explosive. Production. The production journey of Hidden Strike represents a fascinating case study in international film collaboration, bringing together talent from Hollywood and Chinese cinema to create an ambitious action spectacle. The film's production process involved multiple phases spanning several years, with significant changes in casting, creative direction, and technical execution that would ultimately shape the final product audiences received in 2023. Development and pre-production. The genesis of Hidden Strike dates back to 2017 when the project was first announced under the working title Ex-Baghdad. The initial vision for the film positioned it as a major international co-production that would capitalize on the star power of two legendary action heroes. Originally conceived as a vehicle for Jackie Chan and Sylvester Stallone, the project generated considerable excitement within the industry and among action film enthusiasts worldwide. The pairing of Chan, with his decades-long legacy of innovative martial arts choreography and physical comedy, alongside Stallone, the iconic star of the Rocky and Rambo franchises, promised to deliver a blockbuster event that could bridge Eastern and Western action cinema traditions. Mike Fleming Jr. reported in May 2017 that Jackie Chan and Sylvester Stallone were set to team up for the film, which would be directed by Scott Waugh. Waugh brought his own pedigree to the project, having previously directed Need for Speed and worked extensively as a stunt coordinator and second unit director, making him seemingly well-suited for an effects-heavy action production. The announcement generated significant media attention, as it marked a rare collaboration between two action legends who had each defined different eras and styles of action filmmaking. However, the pre-production phase encountered its first major challenge when Sylvester Stallone ultimately backed out of the project. The reasons for Stallone's departure were not publicly detailed, but such changes are not uncommon in large-scale international productions where scheduling conflicts, creative differences, or contractual negotiations can lead to cast changes. This development could have derailed the entire production, as the film's commercial viability was largely predicated on the star power of its leading duo. The production team moved quickly to fill the void left by Stallone's exit. In June 2018, it was announced that John Cena would replace Stallone in the role. This casting decision proved significant for multiple reasons. Cena, while not possessing the same decades-long cinematic legacy as Stallone, had emerged as one of Hollywood's most bankable action stars through his WWE wrestling career and increasingly prominent film roles. By 2018, Cena had demonstrated his action credentials in films like Bumblebee and Blockers, and was building a reputation as a charismatic performer capable of handling both dramatic and comedic material. His casting brought a different dynamic to the project, where Stallone might have brought gravitas and a more serious tone. Cena offered youth, physical agility, and comedic timing that could potentially mesh well with Jackie Chan's signature style. The film cycled through several potential titles during its development phase, reflecting the creative team's evolving vision for the project. Beyond the initial Ex-Baghdad moniker, the production was variously known as Project X, Project Extraction, and Snafu before the filmmakers ultimately settled on Hidden Strike. This progression of titles suggests ongoing discussions about the film's marketing positioning and thematic focus. Ex-Baghdad clearly emphasized the Iraqi setting, while Snafu, a military acronym meaning Situation Normal, all fouled up, suggested a more comedic tone. The eventual choice of Hidden Strike offered a more neutral, action-oriented title that could appeal to international audiences while avoiding potential geopolitical sensitivities. The pre-production phase also involved extensive planning for the film's complex action sequences and visual effects. Given the Middle Eastern setting and the ambitious scope of set pieces described in the script, including massive sandstorm sequences, convoy chases, and refinery battles, the production team had to carefully plan how to execute these sequences safely and effectively. This planning would prove crucial, as the film would ultimately rely heavily on visual effects and controlled environments rather than location shooting in actual Middle Eastern countries. The screenplay, written by Arash Amel, established the narrative framework that would guide the production. Amel's script needed to balance multiple elements, showcasing both stars' strengths, incorporating culturally appropriate elements for the Chinese co-production, creating spectacular action sequences, and telling a coherent story that could resonate with international audiences. The challenges of crafting such a script for an international co-production cannot be overstated, as it needed to satisfy multiple stakeholders across different markets while remaining entertaining and accessible. Filming principal photography on Hidden Strike commenced in 2018, representing a significant logistical undertaking that would test the production team's planning and execution capabilities. The filming period extended from July through November 2018, spanning approximately 5 months of intensive production work. This extended shooting schedule was necessary to capture the film's numerous action sequences, dramatic scenes, and extensive visual effects plates that would be crucial for the post-production process. One of the most interesting aspects of the production was the decision to film entirely in China, despite the story being set in Iraq and along the infamous Highway of Death. This creative solution to the logistical and security challenges of filming in actual Middle Eastern locations is common in modern filmmaking, where production teams regularly use accessible locations to stand in for more difficult or dangerous settings. Chinese locations were selected and dressed to replicate the arid, desert environments of Iraq, requiring significant work from the production design and location teams to create convincing Middle Eastern settings. John Cena's commitment to the production was particularly noteworthy. From July to November 2018, Cena lived in Yanchun, China, fully immersing himself in the production environment. Yanchun, the capital of the Ningxiahu Autonomous Region in northwest China, served as a base of operations for the production. This region's landscape, with its combination of desert terrain and developed infrastructure, made it suitable for the film's needs. Cena's decision to relocate to China for the duration of filming demonstrated his professional dedication and willingness to fully commit to an international production, a choice that would later have personal ramifications he would discuss publicly. The filming experience proved to be transformative for Cena, though not always in positive ways. In subsequent interviews, Cena revealed that working on the film led him into a period of depression, a candid admission that shed light on the personal toll that international productions can take on performers. Cena described feeling as though he was losing everything that I worked on for 30 years, suggesting that the extended time away from his established career base and support systems, combined with the challenges of the production itself, created significant psychological strain. This revelation humanized the often glamorized world of international film production and highlighted the personal sacrifices actors sometimes make for their craft. The production employed Scott Waugh's expertise in action filmmaking to craft the film's numerous set pieces. Waugh's background as a stunt coordinator meant he brought practical knowledge of action choreography and camera placement to the director's chair. However, the film's heavy reliance on digital effects, a point that would later draw criticism, suggests that the production may have faced challenges in executing purely practical action sequences. The combination of location limitations, budget considerations, and the ambitious scope of sequences like the sandstorm attack likely necessitated greater dependence on computer-generated imagery than initially planned. Working with Jackie Chan presented its own unique dynamics. Chan, known for his meticulous approach to action choreography and his insistence on performing his own stunts, brought his distinctive methodology to the production. At this stage of his career, however, Chan was in his 60s, which meant that the physical demands of elaborate stunt work required careful management. The production had to balance Chan's legendary commitment to authentic physicality with the practical realities of his age and the need to maintain safety on set. This likely influenced decisions about how action sequences were designed and executed, potentially contributing to the increased use of digital effects. The 5-month shooting schedule allowed for the complex logistics of coordinating large-scale action sequences involving multiple vehicles, explosions, and fight choreography. Scenes involving the convoy of buses, the custom jet engine truck, and the refinery sequences all required extensive preparation, multiple camera setups, and careful coordination of stunt performers, visual effects elements, and principal photography. The production team had to manage these technical demands while also capturing the performances and chemistry between the lead actors that would be essential for the film's success. Language presented another interesting challenge for the production. With the story involving Chinese and American characters, and a production that needed to satisfy both Chinese and international markets, the filming had to accommodate dialogue in both Mandarin and English. This bilingual approach required careful planning in terms of script supervision, performance continuity, and ensuring that scenes would work effectively for audiences in different markets, regardless of whether they were watching dubbed or subtitled versions. The cinematography, overseen by the director of photography working in collaboration with Wang, had to capture the scale of the desert environments while also handling intimate character moments. The contrast between wide-open desert vistas and the claustrophobic tension of close-quarters action required versatile camera work and lighting techniques. The production also had to account for the visual effects that would be added later, requiring precise tracking markers, green screen work, and technical photography that would serve as the foundation for digital compositing. Post-production following the completion of principal photography in November 2018, Hidden Strike entered an extended post-production phase that would ultimately span nearly 5 years before the film's eventual release in 2023. This unusually protracted timeline suggests the production encountered significant challenges in completing the film to the satisfaction of its various stakeholders, navigating the complex waters of international distribution, and potentially addressing creative concerns that emerged during the editing and effects process. Scott Waugh, who served as both director and editor on Hidden Strike, had the dual responsibility of shaping the film's narrative structure while also overseeing its technical completion. As editor, Waugh had complete control over the pacing, scene construction, and overall rhythm of the film, a level of creative authority that some directors prefer in order to maintain their vision throughout post-production. However, this also meant that Waugh bore significant responsibility for addressing any structural or pacing issues that emerged during the editing process. The extended post-production period likely involved substantial work on the film's visual effects, which would become a point of criticism upon the film's eventual release. The ambitious action sequences, particularly the sandstorm attack created by a jet engine truck, the convoy chase scenes, and the climactic refinery destruction, all required extensive digital work. Visual effects houses had to create believable sandstorms, enhance practical stunts with digital augmentation, add environmental details to make Chinese locations convincingly resemble Iraq, and complete the numerous explosive and vehicular destruction sequences that were central to the film's action spectacle. Creating convincing visual effects for such sequences is time-consuming and iterative work. Effects artists must render complex simulations for elements like sand, fire, and debris, composite digital elements with practical photography, color grade and light digital assets to match the photographed footage, and refine shots through multiple passes based on director notes and technical review. Given that the film was ultimately criticized for its overuse and poor quality of CGI effects, it's possible that the post-production team struggled with budget constraints, time pressures, or technical challenges that prevented the effects from reaching the quality level necessary for a major theatrical release. The sound design and mixing process represented another crucial component of post-production. Action films depend heavily on impactful sound design to sell the physicality and danger of their set pieces. The sound team had to create and mix audio for gunfire, vehicle engines, explosions, hand-to-hand combat impacts, and environmental sounds like the roaring sandstorm. Dialogue editing was particularly, casting underscores why Chan thrives in body pics. His straight-man reliability grounds Cena's bombast, much like with Tucker or Wilson. Yet, Chan's Hidden Strike tenure isn't without critique. Some fans lamented the CGI-heavy sandstorm assault, arguing it dilutes his practical effects. Wo's initial defense feels video gamey compared to Police Story's raw peril. Still, in the climax's chain reaction tanker explosion, Chan's precise timing shines, flipping from heroics to humor as he quips about retirement plans. His casting revitalizes the genre, reminding audiences that at its core, action is about resilient everyman. Fang isn't invincible, he's improbable. Much like Chan himself, a stuntman who became a legend by surviving the impossible. John Cena as Chris Van Horn, from wrestling ring to desert battlefield. John Cena's embodiment of Chris Van Horn in Hidden Strike marks a pivotal evolution in his Hollywood ascent, transforming the WWE Titan from muscle-bound sidekick to nuanced anti-hero in a narrative demanding more ambiguity and romantic spark. As Chris, a jaded ex-U.S. Marine scrapping by in Iraq's arid fringes, Cena navigates a reluctant villain to ally arc, initially swayed by mercenary kin to hijack a civilian convoy for a village well fund. He uncovers the heist's corporate rot and allies with Chan's Fang against a tide of betrayal. This duality, a ruthless pragmatist thought by paternal pangs, fits Cena's post-wrestling reinvention like a custom elbow pad, blending his ring-honed charisma with emerging dramatic chops. Cena's casting, a last-minute pivot from Sylvester Stallone's scheduling clash with Creed 2, 2018, was a gamble that paid dividends in star wattage. Stallone's grizzled Expendables vibe would have leaned harder into machismo, but Cena's boyish grin and "you can't see me" flair inject levity into Chris's cynicism. Born John Felix Anthony Cena in 1977 in Massachusetts, He parlayed collegiate football into WWE dominance by 2002, headlining WrestleMania eras with catchphrases and attitude adjustments. Filmically, he debuted as a wrestler in The Marine, 2006, but Trainwreck, 2015, opposite Amy Schumer revealed comedic timing, followed by Blockers, 2018, and Bumblebee, 2018, as Agent Burns by The Suicide Squad, 2021, as the unhinged Peacemaker. Cena proved he could choose scenery without devouring into a versatility hidden strike exploits in Chris's dune-buggy monologues about water wars. The role's emotional heft to Chris's village orphanage as surrogate family, his fury at brother Henry's death echoes Cena's advocacy for Make-A-Wish, granting over 650 wishes. In a 2025 Steph McMahon interview, Cena delved into the cultural immersion, shooting in the Gobi Desert, learning Mandarin basics from Jackie. It was humbling. Chris isn't just muscle, he's a guy bartering his soul for kids' hydration. That hit home. This authenticity grounds the action. Chris's initial sandstorm ambush, wielding night vision to snatch buses, showcases Cena's imposing 6'1" frame in tactical gear, but his post-betrayal pivot of fist-bumping low amid gun fury highlights the duo's chemistry. Wang noted in Joe Blow, John's improv elevated the banter. He ad-libbed the oil's cheaper than water line, tying into Iraq's real crises. Stunt-wise, Cena's athleticism shines without overshadowing Chan. He handles 70% of Chris's fights, from ATV chases to helicopter grapples, drawing on WWE's high-flying roots. A standout, the canyon escape with kidnapped Professor Chang, Wenli Zhang, where Cena's raw power contrasts Chan's agility, creating a yin-yang dynamic. Critics lauded this in-screen rant. Cena's not taping Jackie, he's complimenting, like a tank to a gymnast. Yet, the casting's genius lies in subverting expectations. To Chris's death fake-out, revealed in a post-credits nod, plays on Cena's indestructible persona, eliciting laughs amid the heist's pyrotechnics. Challenges arose. Cena's Mandarin scenes, crucial for convoy commands, required phonetic coaching, but his earnestness won the Chinese crew. In the same McMahon chat, he quipped, "Jackie's stunt team spoke zero English, so we bonded over protein shakes and falls. Hidden Strike taught me respect for Chan's endurance. He a guy's 30 years my senior but outran me in the desert." This cross-cultural rapport fueled the film's buddy court, with Chris and Luo's alliance symbolizing U.S. China da copyright ante amid geopolitical tensions. Cena's performance elevates Hidden Strike beyond schlock, infusing Chris with quiet pathos like Morning Henry, Amadeus Serafini, while shielding offensive that hints at dramatic depths seen in Fast X, 2023. His casting, born of Stallone's exit, proves serendipity. Where Rambo might have grunted through, Cena laughs, wrestles doubts, and emerges heroic. In a genre starved for fresh blood, Chris Van Horn cements Cena as action's next big monovisible, vulnerable, victorious. Pilou Asbæk the Broken Barquet as Owen Paddock, the calculating villain from Scandinavian shadows. Pilou Asbæk the Broken Barquet's turn as Owen Paddock injects Hidden Strike with a chilling antagonist whose corporate grudge fuels the oil heist's frenzy, a casting coup that imports Danish intensity into this Sino-American romp. As the ex-Unicorp engineer turned mercenary overlord, Owen orchestrates refinery assaults and convoy kidnappings, his 16-year loyalty betrayed into vengeful profiteering. Asbæk the Broken Barquet, with his piercing gaze and serpentine charm, makes Owen less cartoon cutthroat than Iago-esque manipulator, whispering bribes to Chris while executing Henry in cold blood, a pivot from brute force to psychological warfare that anchors the film's stakes. Born in 1982 in Copenhagen, Asbæk the Broken Barquet honed his craft at the Danish National School of Performing Arts, exploding with Borgen, 2010 to 2013, as the ethically slippery spin Dr. Casper Jewel, earning an international Emmy. Hollywood followed. Euron Greyjoy's piratical menace in Game of Thrones, 2016 to 2019, the duplicitous Captain Ender in Ghost in the Shell, 2017, and the haunted detective in The Investigation, 2020. In Hidden Strike, Waugh cast Asbæk the Broken Barquet for his quiet menace. Per a 2023 Yahoo profile, Pilou's not yelling, he's scheming, perfect for Owen's boardroom to battlefield fall. Owen's arc terrorizing Professor Chang, Zhang, by offing a hostage, then unleashing French arms dealers. It draws on Asbæk the Broken Barquet's multilingual edge, delivering threats in clipped English with Scandinavian lilt. A key scene, his ATV cliff plunge, paddle beating and futile escape, blends pathos with comeuppance, echoing Iran's hubris. Asbæk the Broken Barquet relished the physicality, training in Morocco's dunes for authenticity, and in interviews, he noted, Owen's rage is personally Unicorp's neglect mirrors actors' industry slights. I channeled that into every glare. This step elevates the villainy, making Owen's heist not greed but reckoning. Critically, Asbæk the Broken Barquet's casting diversifies the baddies, contrasting Chan's honor and Cena's redemption with Euro cynicism. His Samaritan, 2022, brute force informs Owen's gunplay, but Uncharted, 2022, treasure hunt smart sad layers in the tanker chain reaction. Asbæk the Broken Barquet's final snarl sells the defeat, proving his range beyond fantasy epics. Ma Chanru Mai, the daughter's defiance and familial fire. Ma Chanru Mai serves as Hidden Strike's emotional fulcrum, a casting that infuses the convoy's chaos with generational tension and quiet ferocity. As Dragon's resentful daughter and Professor Chang's assistant, Mai harbors bitterness over her mother's unattended deathbed, yet her covert tailing of Chris and battlefield grit forge redemption. Ma, a rising Chinese star, brings youthful intensity to this bridge role, her wide-eyed vulnerability clashing with steely resolve in a film heavy on testosterone. Debuting in Love O2O, 2016, as the plucky Manyaran, Ma's rom-com charm evolved in Lost Love and Times, 2017, and Shining Like You, 2021, showcasing dramatic boys. Waugh chose her for raw authenticity, noting in vague visages, Chanru's chemistry with Jackie felt organic, like real family strife. Mai's arc peaks in the desert crash and ends with the wall, where Ma's tear-streaked defiance, "You protected a country, not us," cuts deep, echoing Chan's paternal themes. Physically, Ma holds her own. Her off-road pursuit and mercenary skirmishes highlight emerging action chops, trained under Chan's team. This casting empowers female agency in a male-driven tale. Mai's code safeguarding bag pivotal to thwarting Owen. Wenli Jiang as Professor Chang, the steadfast corporate sentinel. Wenli Jiang's Professor Chang anchors Hidden Strike's intrigue as Unicorp's operations director, her poise under duress making her the heist's linchpin. Kidnapped for refinery codes, Chang's coerced cooperation after witnessing a hostage slaying reveals a mother's terror, Jiang's subtle tremors conveying terror without histrionics. A Golden Rooster winner for the story of Zhang Yang 8, 2018, Jiang's gravitas from And the Spring Comes, 2019, fits Chang's ethical bind. Waugh praised her intuitum. Wenli brings intellectual steel. Chang's not damsel, she's decision-maker. Her backhand over to Mai and cliffside pleas with Chris add moral weight. Jiang's bilingual delivery seamless. Amadeus Serafini as Henry Van Horn, the fraternal foil to Cena's conscience. Amadeus Serafini's Henry Van Horn provides the mercenary muscle and sibling spark, his cocky bravado clashing with Chris's reluctance in a casting that amplifies fraternal betrayal. As the convoy attacking brother peddling revenge lies, Henry's arc ends in Owen's bullet, Serafini's anguish fueling Cena's turn. Known from Shades of Blue, 2016, and Smiley Face Killers, 2019. Serafini's Italian-American edge suits the role's opportunism. In Screen Rant, his dynamic with Cena is lauded. Amadeus's smart makes Henry's death sting, propelling Chris's redemption. Stunts like the rocket truck storm highlight his physicality, a nod to indie action creds. Supporting action stars, Zhenwei, Wang, Tim Man, and the stunt ensemble's vitality. The supporting cast's martial artists Zhenwei, Wang, Tim Man, Gong Juna infuse Hidden Strike with kinetic depth, their roles as convoy defenders and mercenaries elevating ensemble fights. Wang, the Karate Kid, 2010, bully turned hero, plays Zhenwei, his Taekwondo black belt fueling canyon brawls. Tim Man, as the tattooed Knox, brings IP Man wirework, his half-faced ink a visual hook in ambushes. Gong Jun, the ex-idol from Psych Hunter, 2020, as Haiming adds model-esque flair to helicopter assaults. While stunt heavy vision relied on this crew, they choreographed the sandstorm as Abel at the Wang's flips, Man's grapples. Their casting fosters authenticity, blending Hong Kong precision with global grit. Female warriors in the fray: Rachel Holloway and Remisden's groundbreaking grit. Rachel Holloway's Tomb Raider moniker belies her Taekwondo prowess as a British mercenary, her black belt kicks punctuating group melees. Remisden, as Li Yan, brings Middle Eastern fire, her Al-Rawabi school for girls intensity to convoy defenses. These choices diversify gender dynamics, while noting, women like Rachel flip the script and no sideline screams. Cultural fusion in casting: Sino-American synergy on the highway of death. What happens when Jackie Chan and John Cena join forces in a high-octane desert battlefield? Hidden Strike is packed with explosive action, wild stunts, and behind-the-scenes secrets you've never heard before. Welcome to Real Signal Studio A. Let's break down the hidden facts and the truth behind this underrated action ride. Hidden Strike, also known as Project Extraction in some countries, is a 2023 action-adventure movie directed and edited by Scott Waugh and written by Arash Amel. The film features Jackie Chan, John Cena, Zhenwei, and Pilou Asbæk in the main roles. Hidden Strike was first released on July 6, 2023 in the United Arab Emirates, and later on July 28, 2023 it came out in the United States and worldwide through Netflix. The movie received mostly negative feedback from critics and did not perform well in theaters, earning only $981,505 compared to its $80 million budget from a small theatrical release. However, once it arrived on Netflix, the film became a huge hit. It became the most-watched movie on Netflix worldwide during its opening weekend, ranking as the #1 movie in the US and in 53 other countries. By the end of 2023, it was the 6th most-watched movie on Netflix across the globe. An oil refinery in Iraq owned by the Chinese company Unicorp keeps getting attacked by mercenaries led by Owen Paddock. The refinery is managed by Professor Chang, the director of operations. After repeated attacks, she calls several private security companies to rescue the civilians who work there. Dragon Wolfang, a former Special Forces soldier, leads his private security team to evacuate the workers. The civilians travel in a long convoy of buses, moving through the dangerous highway of death toward the green zone. The entire trip takes about 8 hours. During the evacuation, Chang explains to Fang that the mercenaries don't want to destroy the refinery, they want to take control of it. She says they have surrounded the area and attack every 2 days. The refinery has 498 civilians, including families and children. Before leaving, she shuts down the refinery. Chang keeps the security codes in her bag and gives the bag to her assistant, Mai, for protection. One of the workers secretly marks Chang's bus with invisible paint so the attackers can identify it. Later. Fang answers Chang's call for help partly because Mai is his estranged daughter. Before entering the highway of death, Fang tries to talk to her and says he wants to protect her. Mai, however, is still hurt because he was on a secret mission when her mother died. Even though Fang explains he was serving his country and family, she tells him she will never forgive him for not being there. Meanwhile, in a rural village running out of water, former U.S. Marine Chris Van Horn needs money to fix the village well. He reluctantly joins his mercenary brother Henry in attacking the convoy. Henry tells Chris they're hunting the man who attacked them years ago, which led to the deaths of 5 soldiers in their unit. Chris needs $100,000 to bribe Unicorp, who control the region's water supply and make water more expensive than oil. Owen acts as the middleman, blaming Unicorp for everything and painting them as the real enemy. To attack the convoy, The mercenaries use a rocket-powered truck to create a massive sandstorm. Under its cover, they steal 2 of the 11 buses. They locate Chang's bus thanks to the invisible X mark made with special ink only visible through night vision goggles. After the sandstorm clears, Fang learns that 2 buses have been taken, including the one carrying Professor Chang, who has the refinery codes. Fang calls in his helicopters and asks Mai to help search for the missing buses. Chris manages to shoot down one of the helicopters and escapes into the desert canyons with Chang. Fang eventually finds the missing buses and discovers that 5 engineers, including Chang, have been kidnapped. Chris confronts Henry because he doubts that Chang is the person who hurt them years ago. He wants to know who hired them. Owen finally reveals himself as the one behind everything. He says he worked for Unicorp for 16 years but got nothing in return. Now he plans to take everything. He wants to restart the refinery and make money by controlling the oil. Owen orders Chris to keep Fang away from Chang, promising to pay Chris and Henry what he owes them afterward. When Chris leaves angrily, Owen shoots Henry for failing his mission. Fang tracks down Chris, who was driving a dune buggy through the desert. Both men accuse each other, Chris thinking Fang killed Henry, and Fang thinking Chris killed his men. Suddenly, French mercenaries appear. They sold weapons to Chris and Henry but are now hired by Owen to kill Chris. Fang and Chris team up to fight them off. During this time, Fang learns why Chris took the job to get money to help the children in his village. Chris also reveals that Owen is behind the kidnapping. Owen forces Professor Chang to cooperate by killing one hostage and threatening her son. He then sends his men to retrieve her bag containing the refinery codes which Chris had unknowingly taken with him earlier. Fang tells Mai that Chris can be trusted because he now sees that Chris treats the village as his own family. After hearing footsteps, Fang and Chris hide the children and then fight Owen's men. To protect the village, Chris finally hands over the bag Owen wants. After finding out the bag holds the refinery codes, Fang and Chris return to the refinery. Owen is planning the biggest oil heist ever by restarting production, filling tankers, and sending them to a large ship controlled by the real buyers. Chris goes after Owen, and Mai secretly follows him using one of Chris's cars. Fang follows behind them in the rocket truck. When Mai goes off-road, she accidentally crashes the car, and Fang rescues both her and Chris. A massive battle follows. Using the rocket truck, Fang and the others manage to blow up one of the fuel tankers, causing a huge chain reaction that destroys the rest. During the chase, Owen speeds toward the edge of a cliff on his ATV, thinking he can escape, but he miscalculates and dies after going over the edge. Believing Chris is dead, Fang and Mai mourn him and finally repair their broken relationship. But it turns out Chris survived. Fang's soldiers rescue him, and together they arrest the people behind the oil heist on the ship. Later, back in the village, Chris and Fang fix the water well. Soon after, they receive news of a new mission. Fang invites Chris to join his team, and Chris accepts, ready to begin the next adventure. Jackie Chan's portrayal of Dragon Luo Feng in Hidden Strike stands as a testament to his enduring prowess as cinema's most resilient action hero, a role that seamlessly blends his signature blend of martial arts mastery, physical comedy, and heartfelt vulnerability. At 69 years old during filming, Chan embodies Luo Feng, a retired Chinese Special Forces operative turned private security contractor, tasked with leading a perilous convoy through Iraq's infamous Highway of Death to evacuate civilians from a besieged oil refinery. This character isn't just a vessel for Chan's acrobatic feats, it's a nuanced extension of his real-life ethos, where duty to family and nation collides with personal redemption. Luo's arc of reconciling with his estranged daughter while thwarting a massive oil heist mirrors Chan's own public narrative of balancing global stardom with paternal regrets, making the casting feel less like a choice and more like destiny. Chan's selection for the lead was inevitable, given his decades-long reign as Hong Kong cinema's export to the world. Born Chan Kong Seng in 1954 in Hong Kong, he rose from Peking opera trainee to stuntman in Bruce Lee's shadow, debuting in Little Tiger from Canton, 1973, before exploding with Drunken Master, 1978, where his wire fu and improvised brawls redefined kung fu comedy. By the 1980s, films like Police Story, 1985, showcased his death-defying stunts leaping from shopping carts, shattering glass with his body, earning him the moniker the face of modern action cinema. Hollywood beckoned with Rumble in the Bronx, 1995, but it was the Rush Hour trilogy, 1998 to 2007, opposite Chris Tucker that cemented his crossover appeal, grossing over $800 million worldwide by blending slapstick with high-octane chases. In Hidden Strike, director Scott Waugh leverages this legacy, choreographing sequences where Wang dispatches mercenaries with umbrella fights and dune buggy acrobatics, echoing Chan's Who Am I? 1998, amnesia-fueled mayhem. What elevates Chan's casting here is the emotional layering absent in his more cartoonish vehicles. Wang's estrangement from daughter Ma Chun-Ruai, stems from a classified mission that cost him his wife's presence at her deathbed, a plot point Chan has echoed in interviews about missing his son JC's childhood amid Rush Hour shoots. In a 2023 Tudum discussion, Chan reflected, "Wo is like me, a father who fights for protection but forgets the home front. This role let me say sorry on screen. This vulnerability shines in quiet moments, like Wo's Dune Crossing pep talk to Mike, where Chan's expressive eyes is scarred from decades of unsaid injuries convey regret without dialogue." Critics noted how this humanizes the action, turning Hidden Strike from B-movie fodder into a father-daughter reconciliation tale wrapped in explosions. Physically, Chan's commitment remains unmatched. Despite the 2022 health scare, a fall during ride-on filming that required hip surgery, he performed 80% of Wo's stunts, including a helicopter takedown and a rocket truck demolition derby that Waugh praised as vintage Jackie, chaotic, creative, and covered in sand. The Jackie Chan stunt team, his lifelong collaborators, amplified this. Sammo Hung's influence lingers in the wirework, while Wang Biao's agility informs the group fights. Casting Chan wasn't just star power, it was a nod to his stunt philosophy, where every bruise tells a story. In Hidden Strike, Wo's invisible paint bus marking trick on a gadget-driven Gaga recalls Chan's Armor of God, 1986, booby traps, proving age hasn't dulled his inventive edge. Globally, Chan's role bridges East-West divides, a meta layer in a film co-produced by China's Basic Pictures and Hollywood's Ziz Films. As Wo, he commands a multicultural convoy of Chinese engineers, Iraqi locals, American turncoats, symbolizing Chan's real-world diplomacy. His 2021 UN speech on cultural unity prefigures the film's theme: action movies fight, but off-screen, we build bridges. Waugh, in a Polygon interview, revealed Chan's input shaped Wo's arc. Jackie insisted on more family beats. He rewrote scenes to make the convoy feel like a dysfunctional clan. This collaborative,